everyone, and welcome to Women in Space, the Architects of Space. Tonight is about celebrating women in the industry, is about celebrating the International Women's Month, and we have gathered here with us some amazing women, and I'm very happy that we are in this large number. Tonight is about sharing perspectives and about ideas. Is about celebrating all the women who have come before us and who have lead us where we are today. But it's also about future and about where we're going and what we can do differently and what we can do more. And all these people that are here with us today in the room and also online, I would like to say hello everyone that is online with us. So it's about leading and about giving inspiration to the young generation, people who are waiting for mentorship probably, people who are waiting for directions, and people who are loving the space industry more than anything, because there are so many people that are very passionate about the space industry and sometimes they lack direction and they don't know where to start. And I would like all of us tonight to kind of inspire those young people and inspire all those women who would like to have a say in this regard. And because tonight is about the reflection and about the emotion as well and about ideas, I would like to just take a few minutes and say welcome. And hope that you all enjoy, and we will all share ideas, and we will all feel inspired, and we will all gather something about our conversation tonight. So thank you so much for being here. A very big round of applause for our panelists, and a very And right now, I would like to welcome into the stage the president of the British Interplanetary Society, Colin Field, to say a few words. Colin, please.
Thank you very much, Attilia. Well, thank you to Attilia for organising this Women in Space event, and to Rudy of the Space Pathways ecosystem. And thank you for inviting me to say a few words as president of the society. A warm welcome to everyone here this evening and online, and a special thank you to our panel for giving us the benefit of their expert knowledge and insight. This is an important and significant event for a number of reasons. A few years ago, the BIS had a session to work out a statement of its values. The statement that we agreed on was, as a society, we are inclusive, optimistic, and forward-thinking. So inclusivity is of huge importance to the society, and it's important to us that we champion those groups that are less well represented in the space industry and space exploration more widely, in particular women, as we are doing here tonight. The BIS is open to everyone with an interest in space, whatever their background. We also very much encourage the contribution of young people with our offer of free membership for under 25s and welcome participation in our range of technical projects and our committees, which do much work for the society. So if you're new to the BIS, please do get involved. The space industry is now opening in all areas for contribution from people of every background with a diverse range of skills, not only in the traditional requirements of qualification in science and engineering. The importance of space to the future of humanity is such that all aspects of human knowledge and experience are needed to be brought to bear, and a diverse and interdisciplinary approach is vital. So to express this as simply as I can, the more women who are involved in space, the better, and in particular, the more women in leadership positions in space, the better. So women need to be the influencing and shaping of the evolution of space exploration at the highest level. Female influence in the space sector is significant, but it needs to be greater. So we welcome this event as a significant step forward. As we have seen throughout history, women often make better leaders than men. I would like to see a female president of the society in the near future, and maybe that person is in the room as we speak. The BS is happy to facilitate the process of promoting diversity through hosting events like this and providing a platform for dialogue and the building of communities of like-minded people. The way to space is now through building positive and supportive relationships through good leadership and communication. So thank you again to Attilia for your initiative in organising this event. And I look forward to the discussion this evening. The BIS is the home of space, and we champion women as an integral part of humanity's progress to the stars. Thank you.
We're moving our attention to our amazing panelists. And I would invite all of them to introduce themselves, to give a short introduction. So I will start with you, Nina.
60 seconds, yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nina Bujima. I'm a British Slovenian. I worked most of my adult life as a broadcaster from in front of the famous number 10 doors as a political commentator. But I was always a space enthusiast, and I have PhD in ethics in space exploration and space science. I developed the concept how to go to work and live on Mars for free, so you don't have to pay $250,000. I'm building now Panopticon on Mars, which is a settlement for the future human living on Mars, where I argue also how they're going to live, whether the nanotechnological and technological achievements are actually achievements for humanity. I'm a fellow of British Interplanetary Society, so those who are not members yet, please, I would like to invite you. And I'm also a member of Mars Society, and I think that our future definitely belongs to the space. Just think about, we were always saying, oh, we're going to space, but hello, we are in space. You know?
Thank you very much, Nina. Libby?
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Libby Moxon. I'm currently working at the UK Space Agency, so that's part of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. I've got a background in physics, and I'm currently exploration manager there, so working on exploring low Earth orbit, the Moon and Mars. I am delegate to the European Space Agency's exploration boards, and I also have the privilege of co-chairing the International Space Exploration Coordination Group's Science Working Group. I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about women in space. I think it's a really important topic. It's really close to my heart. And I think we'll have a good discussion today talking about how space is for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Ia Whiteley, and my curiosity to space began with what are we capable of in terms of our human potential. What challenges can we face and actually come up and do our best at the time of pressure in time and safety critical conditions. And that drove me to first apply to become a pilot. And they were not accepting women in Latvia, in Riga, but that led me then to another diversion, which I thought if I can't do it myself, I will study it. So that's when I started studying psychology. And my mentor, Dr. Raymond Hamden, suggested that I should go as deep as I can and as broad as I can. So I went into clinical psychology, and then that allowed me to do both selection and also research. And research led me to design aircraft cockpits, and that led me to then design human performance behavior program for European Astronaut Center for our first selection, where our British astronaut Tim Peake was. And that led me to opening together at Malad Space Science Laboratory with Professor Alan Smith and Kevin Fong, Center for Space Medicine. And I'm continuing exploration of what tools we have within us to help us improve our performance on Earth, and with that benefit from what we develop in space.
Thank you. So I'm Anna Polonska. I work as an architectural designer in Sheffield, and outside of work I also do research in the field of space architecture, particularly focusing on the lunar environment and design for lunar architecture. And whether I work, on designs for the Earth or for the Moon, I always advocate for the for the human factor and for the design of human-centric, just to make sure that, whatever we design, it's also something that people will enjoy. It's not just machine, it's also, a space where we would be happy to be ourselves in. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Emma Edom. Can I say, Colin, before I start, you took all the words out of my mouth, and I can see that there is a very young person who's taken advantage of your under 25. That's really interesting. That's very young indeed. I'm Emma Edom. I'm an alderman in the City of London Corporation, and that might not sound like it's space-related, but bear with me, it is. We are the financial centre of one of the most influential international financial centres of the globe. And I am a barrister by original training, where I practice in law. I work in geopolitical law, and I'm also a professor in practice at Durham University, where in space research and also in the law school. So I hold a multiple professorship, and I tend to combine the two of them together. I'm looking at how we are going to bring cohesion globally into space. If you can perhaps look at it as the scaffolding that is there to hold up the innovation that many of you in this room are creating and going forward. It's not always an easy sector to be able to gel everything together. So what I do is I combine my satellite experience, and I don't actually mean the physical satellite, but it's like a helicopter view of the globe and industry. And I look at finance, I look at law, I look at insurance, I look at geopolitics, international relations, diplomacy, and how all of that can come together. I sit on various boards. SpaceEye is one of those. That is satellite data integration platforms. I sit on the Fire Arrow. That is a launch pad, or a company that does launch globally, and also Albanova, which is one of those that is about to take effect in Scotland. I sit on many policy tables around the globe, diplomacy tables, regulatory tables, whether it is from defense, security, and also within the commercial sector. And I combine cyber, I combine AI, and then I have just general interest in just about everything that goes on around the globe. And then when you put all of that together, I bring together what I do for space. That you've given me 60 seconds, so I'm actually going to stop there, but I do have various other hats and roles that all come together to create what I contribute to this space sector.
Thank you. I mean, how do you follow that? It's an incredible panel, and a big shout out to everyone who's joined online. My name is Anushka Sharma. My day job, which is my full-time job, is I work on something called the Space Academic Network, which is based out of Space Park Leicester and represents over 57 universities across the geography of the UK. And we're organising technical working groups, but my proudest moment was establishing our Space and Society working group, and very much bringing in social scientists and humanities, lawyers, philosophers and ethicists, particularly from the academic community at the intersection of space. And that has meant that there have been some really engaging conversations about that intersection for broader society. Outside of that, my side hustle, and I'm sure most of us that are in the room on a Friday night have side hustles, and Emma and I joke because we sometimes do sit on panels together on Fridays, which is testimony to the work we all do for the sector. I run something called the London Space Network, which I co-founded with two friends 7 years ago this year. I now lead it, and I've grown it to over 2,000 members of our community. We used to meet monthly. It's a little bit less because you can understand the day job gets in the way. We're actually planning the next event for next month, so if you want to hear about it, I'm sure I'll talk about it a bit more later. And outside of that, I have my own consultancy called Naught. Naught is an astronaut, but with a double A. And that is my space tech and innovation consultancy. And I'm sure we'll jump into why I created that as part of my journey. But I'm really interested in bringing people together to access the sector, but also look at the intersection of how technology can really help innovate. And I'm really passionate about artificial intelligence. And I have some creative outputs that I've started to share with the world, and I hope to do more. So great to be here. Thank you.
you have made the things easy for my first actual question, because the first question that I have for you is, how did you actually end up in the space industry, and what were the defining decisions that you took that led you where you are today?
I was always, since I was like a little girl, I was interested in space. I just had like a big birthday a few years ago, and my friend, we know each other since we were like, I think 4 or 5, said in her speech that I was apparently lying that I have aliens in my attics, and promising her that I'm going to show her aliens. So I was always into cosmology, and I now, at the moment, I'm also like a film director. I'm directing 2 space films. One is Space Junk, and one is We're Going to Mars. And of course, my whole study was based on the, even though I had to work as a journalist, my study was always based to that. So I think there is a lot to contribute to space. It's also a lot to learn from space, how we can strive on as a civilization, how can we actually achieve to secure our life for further civilizations. If we don't go to space and explore what's going on there, for example, on Mars, we're not going to know what's going to happen to our planet, you know, or how to protect our planet. So I think those space jobs and space sector is, to me, like one of the most important like sectors in the world, in our lives.
Thank you. So I've always loved science and space, and especially sorry, I'm forgetting the word for it. Science fiction, that's what I was looking for. I've always loved space and science fiction particularly. But I didn't actually intend to start out with a career in space. I, like many young people, I think about 10 years ago, wasn't fully aware that a space career was possible in the UK. So I didn't intend to end up here, but I followed some decisions centered on what I was interested in, what inspired me, and what gave me purpose. And that's what brought me to where I am today. So for example, I studied physics because I wanted to understand how the universe worked. I like problem solving. And that's given me some great skills for understanding the science community, for working out how to work across disciplines. And also that progress takes failure, which is a big thing that happens in physics projects a lot, for me at least. I didn't go on to be a physicist, so perhaps that's something there. I also chose to travel straight after my degree, and that's because I wanted to understand other cultures and ways of thinking. I know that's a bit cliche, but I think that's really helped with the international collaboration that I do now. And then I went on to do a policy career. So that's because I'm interested in lots of different topics, and working in government lets you be involved in lots of different sectors. And so I think in terms of what led me to be in the position I'm in today, it's decisions that are centered on what inspires me, what interests me. And so it doesn't have to be a plan. You can just follow your interests and then end up in space, which is great.
Oh, amazing. All of that. And so my interest was in trying to follow and understanding what happens in people's minds, physiology, and how can we better that? And how come some people excel when there is a critical moment in their life, or they're faced with an urgent decision or a circumstance? It could be psychological, physical, social. And I wanted to understand why some people excel in that moment, and why some people struggle, and why people struggle and then excel. You know, how does that work? How come we sometimes something in us comes up and we don't know where it's coming from? It doesn't seem to have a bearing on our experience or direct experience. So that's what drove me in my search for decisions. And always it's people on the way, you know, it's people who make us who we are, our relationships that we foster. So they have a lot of mentors that come up in sort of, we meet and I aspire, and I always ask questions. And one of the questions was that when I wanted to work in aviation and space, because space wasn't, just like people were saying, was not necessarily optional. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to aviation. That's, you know, getting a little bit closer to space. And I asked, so how can I, being a clinical psychologist, how can I go into aviation? And I was asked, well, why don't you read some journal papers that you like, scientists that you're interested in, see what kind of questions they leave at the end of the article, what else needs to be explored. And that led me to Australia. And I met Dr. Gavin Linton. At the time, it was a new profession, cognitive engineering. And we were switching from analog cockpit to glass, which is clock displays going to a computer screen. And at the time, there were unfortunately many accidents happening. Unfortunately, across the industry, there was either accident or incident, and there were weekly crashes of some kind. Some of them, horrendous, and the investigation went on. And that's where I entered, as a young student in the PhD, searching for forums where pilots were reporting what was happening, because it was not allowed publicly to speak about the problems, because training captains were making mistakes, not because it was their mistake, but as we found out as a community of human factors, is that the error is human, but not necessarily a pilot error. It's the design, it's the engineering, it's the mechanical, it's the repair team, it's management, it's family. So all of that spectrum, it's not the person, on the line that's pilot error. It's all of us that have an input. So that's kind of one of the key decisions that then led eventually into space, but always people. Okay.
I think for me it was the moment when I actually discovered space architecture, because I have background in architecture and I was doing a research on expanding our territories, and I was thinking, okay, how about living in space? And that was exactly when I started reading about space architecture, when I discovered this topic, when I learned about the zero gravity habitats around Earth, and about those potential ones on the moon or on the Mars that people were looking at. So I got really fascinated by that field. And first of all, I think the most important thing for me was that I loved the challenge, because, on Earth, we've done this before, we build everything. And, on the moon, for example, it's still all about, concepts. It's still about trying to find the best way, the most sustainable way. And then there is also the problem of the environment, of the harsh lunar environment that we need to take into consideration when designing a habitat for humans, to make sure that they can not only survive but also live there and and feel comfortable in there. And because I always advocated in my designs about human well-being and about comfort for people and designing for people, I really felt like I really wanted to contribute to space architecture, because space architecture, it's all about design for people. So essentially it's not just about engineering. Well, space architecture is multidisciplinary, so it's the engineering, it's the arts, it's the design, it's the product design. There is a lot of different things that are involved. It's the psychology as well, to make sure that the way how we design, it's something that we would like to live in. So when we look at the International Space Station, for example, all we can see it's this box, this mechanical engineered box, and okay, we've made it to space. We designed something that we can live and survive in space, but how about thriving in space? So it became very, very important for me to actually look at this aspect. And that's when I got involved into research with a group of my colleagues, where we designed a habitat for the moon, and where I really advocated for that human-centric design, to make sure that we incorporate all of the earthy tones and color schemes. So we make sure that we put different zones, and we introduce this life-work balance as well. And, all of those design decisions that will essentially improve, the habitats and the future of habitats, to make sure that, people not only survive, but also thrive on different planets as well. So I guess this is how I just got here in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I don't really have one interest. I think that's probably obvious now. I have an insatiable curiosity for just about anything, anywhere, whether it's on Earth or up in space. So the way it works for me is opportunities just come and find me. I start having certain views, I look for solutions, and when I do, suddenly I find myself catapulted into all sorts of arenas. So I wouldn't say that there was one defining factor. I would probably say that what brought me into space is a conversation with somebody, which then morphs into a conversation with somebody else. And before I know it, I'm put onto some panel somewhere, which then develops into a keynote speech somewhere else, which then develops into opening Spacecom Expo, both in London and in Glasgow. And the next thing I know is I'm then catapulted onto the ambassadors table. I'm now leading the ambassadors in the UK, where we are going to be developing their plenipotentiaries and ambassador extraordinaires from around the globe right here in the UK, where we are going to start looking at where is it that we are stuck so that we can try and propel the space sector forward. There are many other organizations that are looking at the same thing, but you can never have enough. We're looking at developing an international space organization. I have to say my first degree was, in fact, psychology, but it's a Bachelor of Science in Psychology because I was also interested in how the brain interacts with behavior. And then from that, I went on to postgraduate law. And then from that, I ended up going into industry. I became a chairman of an international chamber of commerce. And then before that, after that, I found myself catapulted into many industries. And so when you put everything together, somehow things come and find me. And in fact, I've done a bit in aviation as well. I'm in fact going to be doing the keynote for security in aviation in Belfast in about 2 weeks' time. Don't ask me how that one came about because I have no idea. But somehow things just happen. So I cannot imagine now that I know what space is and the universe actually ever going back. Space and the universe is actually the future of humanity. And I have a great deal of experience on many things all over the earth. But space and the universe is going to be our future.
I mean, I'm just fangirling here at the end of this. I'm so just adorable. I mean, I grew up in South West London, in Balham, down the Northern Line, and at 7 years old, my mum's sister who lived in Florida got me a T-shirt from Kennedy Space Center. And I got to wear that T-shirt. I still have it, and I'm in my mid-40s now, don't tell anyone. And I remember going to the Science Museum with my uncle, who'd take me in my school holidays. I remember walking through the Space Gallery and just being in awe. And then imagine having a cousin who's actually in Florida who got to go to space camp. So jealous. So I'm kind of like at the fringes of all of these moments in my life. I was exposed to space in some way. But I have had a very portfolio background. My first job was when I was 14 on a high street in Tooting. I worked in a library, you name it. But like you, Emma, I've always been curious. I've always thought about lifelong learning. And I've done everything from working in politics, like general election campaigns, working for the Mayor of London, right through to being the protocol manager for the Olympic Stadium in my home city of London in 2012, which was amazing. But can you imagine the high of working on something like the Olympics in your hometown? That is what led me to think about what my purpose was and what would I do that fulfill me in a way that there was nothing like the vibe in London if you were here or ever had to experience a great sporting event in your local town. And that is when I started dabbling in the space sector on the fringes, right? But it was my dirty secret. I'd go to all these conferences, I'd go to all of these events, I got to meet people, I created a network, I was building relationships. And that is why I had to establish Naught many years after I actually technically started working in the sector. But I have NASA to thank because it was 11 years ago in January that I applied for something called a NASA Social, and I got chosen to attend the launch of a satellite from Vandenberg Space Force Base. And at the time I was working in the startup capital of London in the Old Street roundabout. And I literally remember them saying, are you really going to go? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. And I went, and it was amazing. And it was only because I was working in social media did I realize that you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to actually access the sector. And actually from that moment onwards, my life has had so many different pivots within the very diverse space sector. So there is an intersection for everyone in this room, no matter what your calling is in the sector, whether it's something creative, whether it's something scientific, whether it's community building, whether it's social media or marketing. There is, and there's a science fiction person in the room. So there's science fiction and all of that we can bring to the sector. So you're all here because you're interested, and that sitting and everyone online, I'm just as enamored by all of your stories as ours as well. So yeah, thanks. That's my story.
And right now, because you said that you're usually the last, we'll start with you. So we'll change things a bit. And I think that you already touched a bit on my next question, which is about when and what was the point that you moved from participating in the space sector to actually influencing it. So here brings more on your leadership skills, and I know that you have quite a lot to talk about.
So I remember being at IAC in America, or it might have even been in Bremen many years ago, and Chris Bouchin, who was on the first Blue Origin flight with William Shatner, I remember I kept colliding with him at industry conferences, and this is pre-COVID era, right? So a lot of the sector that I was intersecting with, I was bootstrapping myself because I entered the sector in my early 30s. I couldn't always access the bursaries and funds for young professionals. So I literally took the money that I'd earned through my 10-year career before that to get to these conferences to meet people. And I remember Chris saying to me, he was like, Nush, if you're going to do something in space, do something in space. Don't just keep turning up at these conferences. What are you actually going to do? Are you going to build something? Are you going to do something? And that is when I realized that, okay, it's all very well being in the room, but now I really have to do something. And from that point, it still took me 2.5 years to establish Naught, which was my consultancy, which was really where I was doing a lot of the deep research of where I wanted to work in the sector. And I previously had keys to this iconic building when I worked with a company who's still in this building, Trillium, where we worked on the NASA Frontier Development Lab, which was an AI accelerator program working with NASA and the European Space Agency by partnering AI scientists with space scientists to build some incredible programs. And that just shows you that you never know where you're going to fall into the sector. But I think my portfolio background has allowed me to be creative. So whilst I haven't had a linear path, it's one that's been driven by my personal curiosity. And I think it's coming to a point now where I found a place in the sector, but I always considered myself an outsider because I've built relationships across different networks. But I've brought people from the Olympics through, I've brought people from the London tech sector through, I've brought the AI community through with me on my journey on space. And that is what I think we're all here to do, right? Show and open the opportunity beyond just ourselves in the space sector, because we are so lucky we get to see each other, but we want you to keep opening these incredible conferences with all these different industries. So yeah, I celebrate that, and I'm going to pass the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Noosh, you've got fans as well, by the way. I'm just saying.
I'm going to hide now.
Just in case you're not sure. Can I say that influence isn't always a step. It is something that becomes it's accumulated over a period of time. And it's, first of all, the starting point is years of credibility, and whether it is in the industry, one industry or more than one industry, and extrapolating across many industries. And next thing you know is you find yourself sitting on various tables. I find that for myself, how this all started and then how I somehow got catapulted from one conference to another, like yourself, I found myself, as I've said, opening conferences, then being consulted on. And the next thing I know is heads of state actually have contacted me, more than one, to say, can you please come and advise us on our space agencies? So not mentioning which ones those are at the moment, but I am actually, they would come here to the UK, I would have closed door meetings, I would then make my suggestions, and the next thing I know is I've got mandates to advise various secretaries of state, because they will then pass it down, and I will be looking at, and I look at their space agencies and how we can restructure space agencies. But that means that behind the doors I have influence on the shape that some of the space agencies are going to take around the globe, and how we're going to drive forward space, and how we're going to connect them all up, join up the dots, how we're going to not just looking at the technical side, not just looking at the scientific side, not just looking at the medical side, but how does this translate into their life and humanity, leadership? And Colin, the reason I said that you took most of the words out of my mouth is because one of the things I look at is shifting the paradigms of leadership, because at the moment we are on the verge of Armageddon. And if we don't shift those paradigms, then we're going to find that we don't need to bother with space, because none of us are going to be here. So space for me is the influence in space, and how I got there is actually using a lot of my diplomacy globally, putting it all together and trying to shift those paradigms in leaders today. How are we going to dilute volatility by using the space sector? That is, I would probably say, one of the biggest parts of my influence.
Well, I feel so overwhelmed, with all your fantastic careers and your fantastic background, because I still feel new in this field, because I've been only doing it for less than 2 years, I think. So the first research paper that I actually published was at the International Astronautical Congress. And I felt a little bit like out of place over there, to be honest with you. So I think like the most important pivot for me was when I came here to Reinventing Space conference last year at British Interplanetary Society, when I actually presented my second research that I worked on myself. And in the past, and the most important thing for me was that I just felt like, I saw this amazing engagement from the audience. And after my presentation, I had a lot of people coming up to me and asking me questions. And I just felt like, not long ago, I was the one asking questions. And now I felt that it's great that people are actually coming and asking me, like all the students and young professionals asking me about space architecture and, just the curiosity. And then I also got some great feedback and good advice from other professionals, the more experienced ones. So I felt like this was the moment for me when I actually, stopped. Well, I'm still participating, but that was the moment for me when I moved from participating to actually sort of influencing and contributing more to that as well. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, incredible. I think all of us touching each other's lives is what has an effect. So we most, I guess, intimate and most influential aspect is when people ask you something and we honestly, from sort of a depth of if you wish, vulnerability, we share. And some difficulties that we had and how we worked with that I guess build us better as a team, as a community. I moved to the UK to finish my PhD, and UK apparently did not have a space agency. And that was a disappointment, because I thought, of course, UK, United Kingdom, will have a space agency. But then a friend of mine whom we worked, just as I say, people, what makes, the paths or open up doors, said, Ia, there is this call from the European Space Agency about human spaceflight, and how do we prepare tools to support astronauts on a successful return to the Moon and Mars. And I said, would you like to lead that? And I said, I'd love to. And having background, but not space related. So it was in aviation and selecting crew. So I had a lot of related, work, such as designing latest cockpits, selecting crew, working as a clinical psychologist, understanding where we have, the shift between a disorder and when we shift on the spectrum of symptoms. So having all that breadth really put me in an amazing space, which is all the advisors that I had. People have suggested that would be a good foundation. So, and this happened to be, I also find out that the UK never participated in human spaceflight. And that's our chance to win something like this is not very likely. But for some reason, this particular call from European Space Agency was open to all participants, irrespective whether UK had human spaceflight investment, because we have to pay to participate in certain European Space Agency aspects of research and application. And so we won. We wrote the proposal on the kitchen table with a friend of mine. And she is a biologist and looking into how to design creative problem solving using from examples of how nature does that. So she was in Academ City in Novosibirsk, and her name is Dr. Olga Bogatyryova. And so we led that development and literally lived our life thinking of what it would be like, to go to Mars, to go to the moon and return. And we read everything that was available, including how submariners feel, how firefighters feel in critical environment, what happens with Shackleton, what happens with missions where we explored before, when we come back, we didn't come back, when we had diaries. So all the studies, analog studies, were just beginning. So all of that really helped to kind of build that. And then I met people in the UK who, like Kevin Fong, who is an amazing physician and also a multi-talented, I think, polymath. He's got degrees in, I believe, astronomy as well, and physics and engineering. And all these people were building up the human spaceflight, saying it's important. But UK had this I guess, the edge to say that if we invest into human spaceflight, which is Margaret Thatcher's decision to not participate in that program, and that's why we didn't participate. And we were coming together. At the time, it was 11 of us in the room in King's College, London. Dr. David Green was there, Alan Smith, Kevin Fong, and a number of people. And we were sitting and said, how can we convince the government to invest into the human spaceflight program? And of course, at the time, there was a European, so we already had this under our belt, some human factors studies. And then European Space Agency selects Tim Peake, and there we go. The Space Agency opens, the human spaceflight starts. So, all of these little things that kind of take over. So passing to UK Space Agency.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, influence is kind of coming down to relationships and communication. I think that's kind of an emerging theme that we're seeing here. I completely agree that influence is accumulated and it's all about credibility, but I also think it's about learning from each other and working together. So I'm quite fortunate in my position in government. I get to engage with the UK space sector and ministers to provide that kind of evidence-based advice on how we should shape UK policy. But also as delegate to the European Space Agency, I get to work with other member states and internationally to shape the kind of European approach to space. And so I think it's about creating those opportunities for UK industry and academia, but working with other people to do that. And I think that's kind of, for me, what influence comes down to, is learning from others and working with others to achieve what we want to achieve.
Well, I'm not necessarily thinking I really want to push and influence, but I'm trying more to be helpful, and as a philosopher, I'm a thinker, and I'm a big explorer, and I always want to go deeper and deeper to find the solutions. So that's how I am. And if any of my algorithms help or influence people, then obviously I would be so happy with that. One of the biggest parts in my research as PhD research was, I was actually very disturbed about the fact that, you need to have $250,000 to go to Mars. And I thought, like, that's so vulgar. So Mars is going to be just reserved for those rich people, I mean, what about a nurse? What about a school teacher? What about me, an normal citizen, Why can't I go to Mars, hello? And then I developed the concept, like I went and I was thinking like, okay, with my background from the broadcasting, how much does Netflix make? How much does Amazon make? How much does this? Okay, so if each one of us have, let's say, 250,000 followers per dollar, we can get a supporter for our mission, which is paid in advance, and you can go. And as a return, we can have the biggest live stream show ever. So everybody who supports you can watch what you're doing on Mars, of course, with a 20 minutes of delay, because that's how the signal travels, yeah? So I developed the concept panopticon on Mars, which is quite a funny one. But then as soon as I developed that there were so many more and more questions opening in my mind. And then I needed to have more support in my research, because obviously from philosophy I suddenly went to nanotechnology and to the physics and everything, and I started thinking deeper. Some people will go there, and I know them personally, with one-way ticket. So children will be born on Mars, but they will evolve into a lower gravity. So when you are evolved in a lower gravity, you will never be able to go back to Earth to see your grandparents. So how are we going to deal with that? Are we just going to create like a few Martians and maybe forget about them? Because when Elon Musk runs out of money, hello, screw you, you're there, not my business, right? So I'm always like that. So if I can make like a concept, and I can help with that concept as a thinker and as a science field I know, then, and I guess if that is such a good outcome that I can influence people, then I'm really, really thankful, and I'm really grateful for my life that I can be helpful. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. And right now, looking at your experiences, and because we have lots of young people here with us tonight, both in person and online, I would like to know what kind of advice you would have for early careers in terms of what they should do more to stand out, and especially for young women who are passionate about the industry, what they should do more or what they should do, essentially.
I think, well, to all young people and to you who was born in 70s, I think you are incredibly lucky, because I think you will participate probably in a space flight. I hope I will. I still have a hope. Hope dies the last. But also, I think you will be able to maybe travel to moon, to land on another, cosmic object, and to see human, exploring and living around our solar system. And I think this is like such an incredible, exciting time. So grab it. This is opportunity. There were people who were sailing to India and discovered a new continent, and they also had to go for many months, the way there and back. And obviously to Mars right now, it's kind of 7 months. Okay, nobody was there yet, so we don't know yet, but we'll see. So grab every opportunity, because first of all, the reality, space sector is one of the fastest growing sectors, economies globally. It's every year between 9 and 11%. So there will be job for you there, for sure. And this is a consistent for the past 15 years, and it's just going bigger and bigger. And also with all the troubles we have with the global, with the climate changing, with other problems, they're all related to solar flares, to behavior, what's happening in cosmological time. So we can solve so many of the issues we have now if we go there and see and explore. So just any kind of look. I'm from like a philosopher, and I'm in space, and thinking of Mars, So any kind of job you have, young people, congratulations, you can take it. Honestly, just look around, grab it.
Thanks. I think completely agree with that. And I think my key message would be just to not underestimate the power of strong relationships. So we've talked a lot about networks. We've talked a lot about the people we meet and how they've influenced us. And I think building that network from an early age is really, really beneficial to your career and getting involved in the space sector. So in terms of ways to build those networks, we've already mentioned a few great ways. So UK SEDS run a range of activities for students and recent graduates. Anushka's mentioned the London Space Network, which is a fantastic way to meet people if you're based in London. And then across the UK, we've got the 14 different space clusters, which are run by the Satellite Applications Catapult. So there's lots of different ways to meet people in your area and get into the space sector and start building those relationships. And I think having that network and having those people to lean on can help you develop yourself, but also become aware of opportunities that you may not have known existed. So we've spoken a lot about how space is really multidisciplinary. It's not just engineers, it's not just academics, it's everyone who's in psychology, philosophy, people working in social media. Like, we need everybody. We've got people working in HR. Like, there is a role for everyone out there in space. And so just start building those networks and find where your role is.
Yes, absolutely. Everything, every little bit counts. And my personal curiosity really, when I ask people, how did you get here? You know, how did you get to this moment? How did you arrive to this space? And I found that people's hobbies, people's varied experiences that they had, their interests come together somehow to weave a new profession. And so if you're interested in several disciplines, go for it. The universities very strongly advise cross-disciplinary approaches, cross-disciplinary subjects. So in parallel, I was very much interested in Korean medicine. So this is Eastern medicine, which was not considered to be, proper medicine. But it was my interest. I was interested in that. And that started from martial arts, studying martial art early on. And that was part of human performance. So it's to see, how do you hold yourself? What's the philosophy of life? How do you redirect energy? And this relates to how do we relate with people. So it happened to be that martial art was not about fighting. It was about actually healing and also redirecting, and most of all, holding space. So it's not about acting first. It's about being available for whatever opportunity arises and work with that energy. And so if you have hobbies, envelop them. Speak to other people. How did they come to be? All of these examples, show that it's not a straight path. So whatever your interests are, you might start a completely new profession, completely new direction. So that's it, space architect, physics and interested in policy, and, philosopher and filmmaker, commentator, like all of these professions, law, AI, psychology, all of that.
Yeah, I feel like you have covered it all, like the interest, networking, and being born in the right time for it. I mean, it says it all. I attended one of the events, I think it was a National Space Career in Leicester last year, and someone said that, you may work in a place at a position that still doesn't exist, but, it will exist next year or in 2 years or in a few months because, of how space sector is evolving and, how fast forward we are moving with everything, with the development of AI and everything. So I guess, I think you covered that nicely. But networking, connections, I think showing up for conferences and then doing your own work as well, like research in my case. I will pass that to you.
Thank you. I think I probably have to say, think about developing those very feminine traits of communication, collaboration, and inclusion, because you'll be surprised at just how useful those can be. Communication, because often we find those in the tech sectors or very niche sectors. Languages with acronyms, abbreviations, certain industry words, and they don't always translate to the very people who you might need to influence in order to be able to get ahead. So my advice would be, most certainly, learn how to communicate without the use of acronyms, without the use of technical words. Break it down into ordinary language so that a 4-year-old will understand it. I have to confess that the number of times I've had to say to, and I'm a multiple professor, and I have had to say to those in industry, can you please talk to me as if I'm a 4-year-old until I can understand it? It doesn't mean that I don't have the mental capacity for solutions. I just don't have a clue of what those words mean. So learn to communicate. Integration and collaboration, because space is going to be the future of humanity. And if you start today with inclusion and collaboration, you'll find that that's the direction that humanity is going to take. So I would probably say those three are going to be the most important from where I'm coming from.
Thank you. There are a plethora of UK-based space companies and startups. So there are official programs. I don't know if it's still open, but there was one with the Space Agency where they've got 50 internships that you can apply for across the whole of the UK with space companies. But that doesn't mean you can't approach those companies yourself and do the research and find the one that's the fit for your career path, if you're an engineer or if you're looking at even business development. Those business skills are really important about driving a customer base, which is going to help them scale those startups and those scale-ups and actually grow the sector even more. There are 55,000 people that work in the space sector. It's a massive community, so lean on them. I've sat at the intersection of artificial intelligence over the past 10 years, and I really worry about the impact on your digital profile. So think about ways to credibly put your experience on your physical CV, and of course lean on those digital tools like artificial intelligence. But some of my academic peers will say, please practice the art of reading. Really take that time, and instead of just uploading a PDF into a large language model, whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, take the time to really read through those papers that you're trying to learn and digest and bring out new ideas, because if we keep perpetually using those models, we're just going to be having this echo chamber of thoughts. And what we really need from you as the future of our sector is for you to bring those fresh ideas and use that tech-savvy approach if you're technical to think about new solutions that we need. So there's the technical side of it, and I really think there's the human side of it. We've taught networking. Building relationships is the thing that has taken me through my political career all the way through to where I am. And I can't tell you how important it is for you to talk to the person you're sitting next to in the room, talk to the people in the chat online, connect with people on LinkedIn, model your career by looking at someone who is interesting to you, or they've got the kind of career pathway, and see through their experience what they did and how can you model it. But also remember that when you reach out to people, if they don't get back to you, don't take that as something as being rude. Often, I just want people to be graceful and kind and think that we're all busy people. They're just probably dealing with life stuff. So when someone doesn't get back to you, or it's a no, it's never a no forever. It's just a no for not now. And so don't be disheartened if someone says no, because I don't think that ever means that the door is closed. You can just knock on it at a different time with maybe a different approach. So I hope that helps.
And it's very good that you raised that point, Anushka, because it happens, especially nowadays when all the people have so many things to do. But one thing that I would like us to get a bit more into detail, because you already mentioned programs and initiatives, I would like to hear more practical initiatives or programs that you know for people in this room to know about and to go for them.
Yeah, so that with LSN, actually our January event, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of space careers. So if you're early career and you're looking for your first job or a job in the sector, they've been established now for 10 years, and it was a startup that came out of UK SES, which is great. There's also the Space Generation Advisory Council, which is very much part of a global network of young professionals. So I think people up to the age of 35, and then they have an alumni network which they've established. And then events like mine that I put on a regular basis. But again, some of those events do sell out really quickly. And I know this is online, I know this is recorded, but if you're really wanting to come, I probably will have a dropout at the last minute, and if you message me, I'll often just say come, but please don't all turn up, because sometimes there is a capacity issue. So there are lots of practical ways, and then I'll think of others if we don't hear, but I'm sure you're going to catch some that I haven't said, so thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I like to create my own practical pathways. So often what I do is I would advise young people and all not to simply think that they have to join an existing club, if you will, an existing initiative. Sometimes you can think ahead of the curve and you can see ways that others haven't seen it before. And I would like to see more people being proactive where gather your own groups, bring them together and start looking at things differently to how others have seen them before. I don't at all discourage going into the larger organizations, into the larger programs, the more established programs. They could always have a breath of fresh air. But sometimes they can be quite stuck in the ways that they do things. Nothing wrong with that, but you can, when you develop your own initiatives, you find that they can complement the existing ones. So I would say don't hesitate to make your own, but collaborate with the existing established organizations.
That's well said, yeah. I have nothing to add, so.
I think the kind of greatest opportunities are a human connection. And our current space, being with the AI and technology and being online is actually an advantage because you don't have to travel and you can attend events across the globe, even across timelines. And that's extraordinary. So look out for, like in Australia, although it seems far away, but because they have I guess, growing, very young space sector, they organize a lot of opportunities and they branch out. I found out about the Royal Aeronautical Society in Australia. I joined that sector there before I ever, came to the UK. So wherever you are joining in online, connect with people online. And Anushka said that, people do want to share their background and questions they ask. I often get, letters from emails from students, and I try to respond to as many as I can, but sometimes I just can't. But it's nice that students, from school write and ask, well, I'm interested in this. How can I, go ahead? Which direction can I take? And, if you can share, now that we have digital, era, share the pathways. How did you, come to be what you do? And not just talk in the panels, but write it out so other people can follow, because it's now all searchable. So, yeah, incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think digital ways of connecting is a great way to tap into different pathways, different forums, discussion forums. I do also think doing things in person is really important. So building in-person connections. I think a lot of the initiatives have already been mentioned, but UK SEDS, UK Space, SPANs, Space Clusters, the Satellite Applications Catapult also puts on events, the London Space Network, ESA and the UK Space Agency all put on events, either career events or discussion forums. And I think these are really good opportunities to start tapping into a pathway in space. I think conferences are also really helpful. So the Spacecom Expo was earlier this month. I think it's still March. I'm kind of losing track of the dates, but the floor pass for that was free. So it's possible to go along to these conferences, get a feel for the breadth of different industry bodies and academia that are present at them, and start building networks that way and get a feel for the careers that are available. And as Anushka said, there might be opportunities to do an internship or some work shadowing, but it's by making those connections in person and meeting people that you can really start to grow that opportunity. I think there are also internship programs at the UK Space Agency. ESA has similar programs as well. And if you're sort of a mid-career professional, Southampton has a space systems engineering course. It's a short course that lasts for a week, and that's a really good opportunity to deepen your understanding around engineering. So depending on what you're interested in and what you'd like to do, there's lots of different ways to start down a space pathway.
I'm just going to add, please come visit us here at Vauxhall. Join British Interplanetary Society. We are all kind of people. We even have artists, who are like making beautiful art of our cosmic objects. We are all kind of people like film directors, philosophers, scientists. We are open. We are social. We have so many events throughout the year. Also conferences, or if we can introduce you to other people. Like I can only give you a very warm invitation as a fellow of British Interplanetary Society. And if you're under 25, I think we still have some benefits and you can join for free. So very welcome.
Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you all. Right now, one topic that I would like us to move into, and I know we had this conversation before, Emma, it's about inclusivity and how we can make space more accessible to all of us. And I would like us to touch a bit about that. What should be redesigned and reshaped so more women have access to the space industry? What are your thoughts about that? And who would like to start?
I'm going to be a bit political now because I actually, a few years ago, we had, I think it was still COVID when we had on Zoom, he was president of Indian Space Agency, or maybe CEO. And he said, where is the strong middle class? There where you're going to have a lot of people involved into space activities, space sector. And there you're going to have also a lot of any kind of people involved. And as you know, India is like becoming a proper power in space. So it's in Africa as well. You have very strong Kenyan Space Agency and others in globally Africa. What is happening now with the United States is very sad because a man who we all trusted and we found him as a great inventor and an amazing person goes political, kills literally most of the NASA because he wants to do this IPO of SpaceX. And he killed also the Mars mission. Immediately he wants to obviously get a lot of investors in June or August or whenever he wants to do it. He's going to lie probably on social media again. So we shouldn't be naive. We still have to remain positive, but we shouldn't be naive. We are on a very, very interesting path now where we can win, as a humanity, and we can win against those like ego-tripping kind of people who live in societies who then let them be ego-tripping, And I think that this is our thing, this is our fight for the common use of the space and for everybody. And just think about the space treaty, the only one we have from 1967, I think. It says that no country can own any of the objects in our solar system and beyond. But it doesn't say no man. So I'm just having like a political message, and I hope you don't mind.
I think what you said there about space being for everyone is really important. I think when it comes to accessibility, we've come a long way from the early days of space when it was a sort of old boys club. I think there's a story that my colleague Meg, who's a reserve astronaut but also is our commercial lead at the Space Agency, was telling the other day. She was doing an outreach event at a school on astronauts, and a little boy asked, "Do you have to be a woman to be an astronaut?" And that question is just unimaginable from when I was at school. Like that would never have been a question I would have asked. And so I think that's great. 2 out of 4 of our astronauts in the UK are women. The first Brit in space was a woman. The first astronaut in a disability, John McFall, has just been cleared for going to the ISS. So there is a lot of progress, but I do think there is still a lot to do. So ANUSA, which stands for, I've written it down because I always forget, the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, have some statistics. So 11% of the world's astronauts are women, only 20% of the space workforce is women. And it took until 2020 for there to be the first toilet on the ISS that was designed with women in mind. So we are making progress, but we do still have a long way to go. And it comes down to ensuring that we have opportunities for women, particularly through life events around pregnancy, motherhood, menopause. For example, I was talking to somebody who's a geologist, and they were talking about field work. So fieldwork is often designed with men in mind, so they don't really think much about going to the toilet, the bathroom, menstruation, and that is something that we should be designing into our research programs, and we need to be educating our leaders on making it accessible for everybody. I think there's also points around making sure that STEM is the norm for girls when we're looking at schools, and supporting initiatives that promote accessibility. So King's College London have their Space for All initiative, which is on promoting accessibility and inclusivity in space, and ESA's Fly Feasibility Study, which is what John McFall was a part of, is another important example of promoting and investigating making space more accessible. So ultimately it comes down to redesigning our policies and our processes to ensure that space is for all.
Yes, incredible. I agree with all of that. And the event today is exactly that. You know, it's about inclusivity, it's about changing, and it's really that beautiful movie, The Right Stuff, you know, changing what the right stuff is, or expanding, deepening our understanding. It's about including letter A in STEAM and call it in STEM, right? So adding art, you know, because art has a lot of design aspects, which is absolutely vital. We love beautiful things. We thrive in beauty. We thrive because of art. Surgeons perform better if they go to an art exhibit or at an event where they are engaging their other part of the brain. So it's important to combine and be diverse. And we often don't see, you know, the seamstress that made the spacesuit, you know, a partner. At the moment, it could be, you know, a husband or a wife who stayed home in order for their other partner to go to space. Or it's about teachers who inspire, you know, that generation that will go, and not stifle them to say that, no, you can't, you know, it's not for you because so-and-so. So it's about saying, yes, go, follow your curiosity, and starting, you know, in school programs. So there was early program, European Space Agency engaged. It's called Train Like an Astronaut. And that was incredible. It was such a successful program, and a lot of material still lives on Ezero, I believe. Is it still live? Yeah. So, and I have downloaded lessons from there in order to go to school, also to do outreach events. So, and we don't have to be in the space sector to do, you know, to go into a school as a parent, for example, or as a young aspiring, you know, student or scientist who could just, you know, find something and go to a local school and set a club, you know, for what we like to do, because together we will build a new community and new people. And it could be, you know, art in space, architecture in space. It could be music in space. It could be, you know, how can we bring nature into the environments, you know, when we go to Mars or go to the moon, be in orbit, because that's what harmonizes us. We know that spending, you know, 2 hours in nature reduces anxiety. Well, it reduces stress, improves sleep, improves our tolerance. So we do need that, you know, included in our future, you know, space travel or space exploration. So all of that is necessary.
I think I would like to dwell more on the STEM problem, because I think like there is this barrier for anyone that's having a non-STEM background. Because, well, and I'm speaking here from my experience, from my impression. So, for example, when I went to the International Astronautical Congress, I was genuinely interested in one of the lunar rovers. So I spoke to the gentleman that was, you know, presenting them. And it was me and my colleague that were, you know, having that discussion with him. And at some point he asked us, so who are you? What are you doing here? And we told him that, oh, we are the architects. And the moment when his face shifted, his approach, his attitude, it just changed immediately. Like I don't remember if he said that exactly, but the way how he approached us, it was like, what are you even doing here? Because in the end, we are here. It's all about engineering, about satellites, about, you know, about outer space. And there you have architects, what architects are doing here. So even though the day before I presented my own research, I felt a little bit out of place at that moment. So yeah, I think that this is the point when people forget that it's not just about the engineering again, like I mentioned before, when we design the space habitats or when we think about the ISS, it's not just about the engineering and about that box. We want to think beyond this box, outside of that box, right, as designers. And another example that I can actually bring up is when I sent my my research paper for one of the journals, I actually received a feedback that I didn't expect. And that paper was about how to improve well-being and comfort through design in a lunar habitat. And one of the feedbacks said that this paper is not technical enough. And I'm like, that was the point. That's the entire point. And while my team actually, took into consideration of, how we're going to build this habitat, what resources we're going to use, what sort of resource utilization we're going to use, what's going to be, the energy, how we're going to produce it. We actually took it all into consideration. It's just that the paper itself actually focused on that human aspect that I really advocated for, and that was the main purpose that I wanted to talk to. So I guess, we need to remember that, space, it's not just about engineering, about satellites, it's also about bringing people, with the soft skills, like with the psychologists, the ethicists, the designers, product designers. We need to think about everyone. And, if you really want to, you can actually see how your skills can contribute to the space sector as well. And I guess that's how you could make your way there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'd be amazed at how much toilets give us an indication of gender diversity. And because I've been in my professional life now for over 30 years, 3 decades worth of going into professions where I'm always one of the very first women to enter whatever it is. Even the bar, many years ago, I became a barrister in 1993. And it wasn't that long before I became a barrister that women's toilets were introduced into chambers. And the reason it had only just been introduced is because there wasn't a requirement for them before. The female barristers would have to leave chambers and go and find something outside. I'm the 5th woman to have become an alderman. We're still working on that one. We do have toilets, by the way, but we're still working on that one. I was actually at Space Centre not that long ago. I was very kindly invited to join a brainstorming table, and I did the very human thing, and I needed to go. And I asked, where is the ladies? Because I can see the gents, but I couldn't see the ladies. And a very embarrassed person said to me, well, what you need to do is you need to obviously leave this room, turn left. Then you need to turn left again. Then you need to go through some double doors. And then you need to turn right. Then you need to go through another double door, then another double door. And then as you walk down the corridor, and I'm thinking, I really need to go right now. Another double door, and then you will get there. And I kid you not, it actually took me several minutes like to actually get there. So, and that perhaps is another good, the gents were just outside. Mm-hmm. That is probably, and it wasn't even the same department. It was actually female lavatories of a different department. Mm-hmm. So we often say that winches are, if you see winches in the skyline, that's a good indication of how the economy is doing, because there's a lot of building. If you see ladies' lavatories close by, you've got gender inclusion. So, but that's not what my topic is going to be now. I'd like to, I would say that inclusive epistemology is probably key, because we find that even in scientific research globally, it is not the valid, it's not the valid results that are always accepted as credible. Even peer reviews somehow psychologically seem to criticize from certain, from female gender to sometimes geographical research that is done. And voices are not always equally credible. Even if the science and the results are credible, the acceptance of the scientific research is not always equal. And if we are going to further the space industry, and if we are going to be true and authentic to the space industry, we need to start looking at what does that inclusion in science and research, the voices, how do we validate the voices globally so that it is simply true science and not because there are psychological barriers or geopolitical barriers to what the truth is in terms of our progress in the world.
Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I think back to the COVID era when we couldn't leave home, but barber shops were allowed to open and nail salons weren't. Like, what? And I think that is a direct indication of like the lack of like feminine policy making at the core. And I think this is something I've always advocated for. And so I do a lot of inclusion work, particularly for like women in tech and underrepresented communities. I was the ambassador for people of colour in technology at Google Campus, which is a startup campus in London, which has sadly no longer exists, but the Google for Startups still exists as an online entity. The challenge of inclusion for our sector is across everything. It's not just our sector. And I think that like it's gender equity, it's people from different economic backgrounds. My boyfriend and his dad are in the Patmore estate just opposite Battersea Power Station, not so far away. And they literally are the other side of the road of like the glam flat. So there is so much we still need to look into. But to me, inclusion is infrastructure. So in my line of work in academia, I have the honour and privilege of thinking about blue skies, thinking of like the futures of our sector, right? And that's so exciting. But I want us all to reverse engineer that question. So if we want to build that incredible future, what are the things we're building? What do we need to change right now in this minute? Because yesterday doesn't matter anymore. What do we change now to help bring that future forward tomorrow? And I think that's the question we need to ask each other. And I think what I've really celebrated about today is how inclusive the event is. This is the first women-only panel I've been on with this number of women, but with so many men in the room. It's amazing. Thank you so much for being here, because you are the reason why we can be in this room. And looking out at the room, I've seen people who've supported some of the events I've been at. That is lovely. And we need to talk about the good things and celebrate those wins as well. And I really want to think about young boys in school and how we bring them up in a progressive future where we are all equals regardless of our gender and backgrounds. And I think we have to do this together. And it isn't going to be easy, and it's beyond our sector. But I look at my friends who are startup founders of space companies that are women, and the lack of money that VCs, spend on empowering those startup founders is shocking. And it's not just in the space sector, it's in the tech sector generally. So if anyone is a VC or looking to invest, please make your thesis to invest as inclusive as possible, because I really worry about the foundations that are perpetuating the systems that haven't served women today, yesterday, or tomorrow, and they won't unless we shape the table. So I agree with your points, Emma, of like design your own community, bring your own table, because if you try knocking on doors, and I have knocked on many doors and never entered those rooms, right? You have to build your own table, because you will bring the people with the right motivation, the values that align to what you're building, and they will join you and they will support you. And that, to me, is how you bring this new force in, because I've been trying and it wasn't working. And it was when I met people like yourselves on this panel that I've started to see this wave of change. And I have to commend the British Interplanetary Society for putting on this event and the incredible words, Colin, that you said at the beginning. So I truly believe that that is the future of this society going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And right now, because we're getting close to starting the Q&A for the audience, one question that I have, and to be honest, this was one of my favorites that I added tonight, is about your personal inspirations, and if you have any idols and who has been there as a figure for you that has inspired you along the way. And I would also like to introduce another question to this, which is if you can also share a lesser known contribution or achievement by a woman, because I know that there are lots of news, but some of them don't make it into the front page. And I would like to know what's your opinion about this and what you would like to share.
So first of all, I'm going to shout out Samantha, who's sitting in the room at the back, who has a book that's going to the moon. So I'll shout her out as an unsung hero. I was at the Science Museum last night. It's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. Live long and prosper, people. And I got to see the first Star Trek motion picture for the first time on the IMAX. And there was an Indian model, an actress called Persis Kambata, who sadly passed on, who had one of the lead roles, playing Lieutenant Ilya in the film. And I cannot believe that I didn't know that until yesterday. And that actually is a 40-something-year-old brown woman with Indian roots, was like shocking to me. So I want to shout her out. And actually, before I even knew about the Indian space missions, there's Mission Mangal, which was the Mars orbiter mission that ISRO launched. There is a whole female-led team from the Indian Space Research Organisation, the equivalent of NASA in India, who actually were the brains behind that mission. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great film called Mission Mangal, which I highly recommend. And just seeing female engineers wearing saris, literally still doing all the cooking at home, but still going to ISRO and solving the problem of getting to Mars was just incredible. And what was it? Remind me the other question. It was
The lesser known achievement.
Yeah, so the other funny thing is, so I grew up, obviously, as you know, here in the UK, born and raised. Watching Helen Sharman go to space at school was incredible. And she was the only person I could relate to because my surname is Sharma and her name is Sharman. And that, to me, was what sold me to Helen Sharman. It sounds so silly, but little things like that are the things that anyone who's interested in the sector will pin their hopes and dreams to. So Anushka still wants to be an astronaut. I don't know if I will. I know I'm on a rocket ship right now, which is our planet, so I'm still an astronaut, as are all of you. So, yeah, those are my people.
Thank you. I have to say, it cannot even be just one person. For me, it is a combination of both men, women, people from all spheres of life that I've been observing for so many years. But the common thread amongst all of those who have certainly influenced me, it has to be those that carry integrity. Because I sometimes find that in some of the levels that we reach at the highest levels, we sometimes find that what I call vanity titles tend to perhaps overshadow integrity. So those that I find the most inspiring are those who do not succumb to fear, they don't succumb to favor. But even if they are speaking ahead of the curve, and they are speaking outside of the box, and others are not following them, not right away, eventually they will. If they stick to their ground, they stick to their values, and they bring authenticity, they will eventually find that others will follow. If I can say, Anushka, it's something that you said, which is that you knocked on so many doors and you created your own tables. If somebody doesn't let you into their club, make your own club and then make it better than theirs. And then they will come and knock on your door and then you decide whether you're going to let them into your club or not. Those are the kind of people that I find the most inspiring. If I had to name them, I am going to name those that perhaps some are better known than others, so I'm going to combine all of them together. The ones that inspire me the most, certainly today, having listened to this panel, are Anna, Libby, Ia, Nina, and of course you, Anushka. How can we not say that the women on this panel are almost certainly going to be the kind of people who influence, but are not always known in the wider world. If I had to name any one of you, if I walked outside and I named any one of you, chances are that the person in the Lebanese kebab shop across the road somewhere, I did eye that up, I was quite hungry on my way in here, probably won't know who you are, but I can assure you that these ladies, the work that they are doing is second to none. I am really quite inspired by every single one of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Okay. So I'm really glad we didn't skip those questions because those were the one I was so looking forward to. Because when you invited me to come to this panel, I was like, yes, space architecture. I can talk all about women in space architecture because I believe they are the leaders in space architecture. So I can't name one that inspired me because this is a collective of women that I have heard of, that I read about, and that I personally met as well, which was brilliant. And in fact, one of the congresses, the very first congress I attended to, as I was sitting in the room when we had the session on space habitability, as people were doing their presentations, at some point I sat, I looked around, and I realized that all of the chairs are in fact female. And it made me feel so proud and so great, like I was inspired at that time. And there was also Olga Banova, which is one of the greatest female space architects that I know, that I also met in person, which was brilliant. And she wrote a book about space architecture, actually a couple of books on space architecture. She's done a lot of research in this field. And there are many other female in space architecture that have done a lot of work on that, on space habitation. So yeah, it's just amazing. So yeah, we have to remember about them. And in terms of the one person, the lesser known one that I would like to talk to is Galina Balashova, which was I would say the very first space architect who was contributing to the first designs of Mir and Salut in 60s and 70s. And in fact, for a very long time, she was not known because she was just an architect, not an engineer. So no one even knew about her. And in fact, she was the one that actually, started space architecture. She started the interior space architecture because she was the one who advocated for putting colors into the Mir station and into Salut station. And she actually worked on those because we are dealing with zero gravity, so we have no sense of what's up, what's down. So she designed this color scheme where she would put darker color on the floor and then white color on the ceiling, just so, it's easier for astronauts to advocate. And she also advocated for putting different zones so people could have their own personal spaces as well. So I think there's a lot of amazing female space architects that, we could learn from.
Yeah,
thank you.
Amazing. I would like to also name my colleagues that are kind of unseen in space programs, which it's a group of women in Star City who are very interestingly, and it's almost a point of humor or a joke, all of them started in educational or child psychology, and they are the ones who are space psychologists. And although I really, really wanted to work in Russian space program or Soviet space program because I was born in that era, but I happened to be introduced to that through being in the UK and, through supporting this international program. So inevitably, I end up being in Star City and meeting these women and learning from them because they've been doing this for many, many years in space psychology. So Dr. Anna Yusupova she's multilingual. She speaks French, English, and Russian, and she supports polar missions, and she does post-flight interviews, and incredible, mother as well. And she is multi-talented. She has a design company as well. So she's just incredible women, just like the ones here who are not doing just one thing. And the other person who I found aspiring, and we have behind us sort of a Soyuz and Apollo project. I happen to, actually Alexei Leonov, I met him here in the UK, and he picked me out of the entire room and says, "You must be Russian." And I said, yes, I was, it's the only person I wanted to speak with. And so we started to speak with him. And I said, I know it's a mundane question, but why did you, how did you become a cosmonaut? And he said, well, actually, I did not know that, we will go to space or there will be cosmonauts. I wanted to fly because I wanted to see clouds better. So he is an artist, at heart, and he wanted to fly so he could see what are the clouds made of. So that's how he became extraordinary, elite pilot and test pilot, and then been selected in the first crew. And I saw how beautifully caring they are to each other, like how much he cares about every single person he works with, how heartfelt and connected each family is. And this, what we see behind us and what I have experienced. So when I worked in I was kind of the link at the UCL, at University College London, when we started having challenges about how we're participating on ISS or not. And there were a lot of times, well, at least 3 that I could count throughout the 13 years, that suddenly there was not, the Russian scientists were not allowed to speak to the US scientists. There was like a mandate. They were not allowed to communicate. And they will reach out to me and say, yeah, are we still talking? Because we're told not to talk. And I said, of course we talk, that's what science does. Science, art must reach out, across. We build on human relationship. We don't build on politics. We build on connection to each other. And so Alexei Leonov happened to be the person who flew this mission. And this was the first contact to end Cold War. So he's the one who flew across, and they hugged each other, for the first time in space. That was a peace act. And International Space Station, still, we fly on both spacecrafts. We fly on US spacecraft, we fly on Russian Federation spacecrafts, and it's joint crew. And when you talk to them, they are families. They relate to each other. They know each other's children. They invite to each other's houses, So that's where our connection is, through families, through connection, to bringing our children to connect to all cultures in the world. And so to me, we don't see what they do. We see them in space, but we don't see what they do as families, how they bring this relationship that's beyond what's happening, in the news. And so that's what I think is important, human connection.
Hard to follow all these great answers. I completely echo what's been said. I mean, everyone on this panel is so inspiring. It's so incredible to be part of this with all of you. And I think that, there's so many people that shape who you end up being in your career and how you lead and how you contribute to things. The one that kind of came to mind when we were talking about this for me was actually not even from the space sector. It's from my first job at the Ministry of Justice. Our director was a woman who just had such people-centered leadership that really empowered everybody to work really hard, treat everyone with respect, and really work well through some really challenging circumstances. And I think that was all testament to her clarity and her clear communication, which I think has been a bit of a theme here today, is about how we communicate with each other. It would be remiss of me also not to mention our CEO, Paul Bate, or soon to be ex-CEO Paul Bate, because he's also a really people-centered leader, and he has sort of coined the phrase "space is a team sport," and I think that's really, really true as well. So that definitely feeds into how I try to lead and contribute to what I'm doing. And then your second question was about lesser known or less visible female contributions, and I think I'm going to go back to Helen Sharman, because I think whilst we are aware of her as the first Brit in space, it's not talked about enough. There's a lot of press that went around Tim Peake's first flight. He was the first institutional British astronaut, but we don't talk enough about the first Brit in space being a woman. And I think that's testament to generally not talking enough about women's achievements. So I think events like this are a really good opportunity to do that more, and I hope that will continue in future events.
I'm going to start with the less. I don't want to necessarily talk about just women or men, but maybe about beings. Like I'm constantly thinking about like a dog, It always kind of touches my mind and heart and soul. And I'm also thinking about the lady spider who was able to make a web in the International Space Station. So it's not about the gravity, it's actually about the light, you know, the way spiders make web, about all the mice there and other creatures they bring, but also about the women. Yeah, I forgot the name of the film and I'm so ashamed as a film director. You're always like, you know, the 3 African-American women who found
Yes, of course.
Skin figures.
Yes.
Thank you.
Terrific.
What an incredible story, and it's so well incorporated with the toilet,
Yes. I was thinking
with
about that.
everything
Yeah.
what we talked today, you know, like tonight, isn't it? I mean, when I watched that, I was angry, I was emotional, I cried, I couldn't believe that happened, you know. But also about, I'm going to now skip a time and I'm going to say, I was privileged enough to interview Valentina Tereshkova when she was at the Science Museum. I think it was 2015 or 14. And I had an interview with her for the Television Slovenia I worked for. And I asked her, do you still remember that flight? You know, what made you the first woman in space? And she said, Ninyochka, I still dream about that flight. It comes to my conscious and it comes to my dream all the time. And I think that was so beautiful. And then also about the latest Sunita Williams, who started in the International Space Station. To those who don't know, she's also of Slovenian background, like me, and Indian. And when she was first time to International Space Station, she took very famous Slovenian sausage and Slovenian flag to the station. And I said to my friend, who is a current president of Slovenia, I said, listen, she stuck up there, and she did so much for her country. I think you should send her a birthday message. And then I went to Colin and I said, Colin, you should send her a birthday message. And then the president of Slovenia said, so how do we do that? How do we do that? And I said, don't worry, I have contacts in NASA. We're going to do it. So I wrote to Bert Ulrich and I said, come on, connect us. We have so she was very grateful. She didn't complain she's there. She didn't make a fuss. I met her in person in January. I was invited to Slovenia to this special event. And she also said that apparently when she landed back, her mother said to her, but you should do something, like something about it. You were like 9 months there. Come and wrap a towel and come out, pretend you have a baby. and so I'm going to end it here. Yeah.
So much. Good things to know and learn. So I didn't know about that story but now. I would also like to say very quickly a few words about my personal inspiration because it stands here tonight. And my very early inspirations in the space industry was actually Mina. I still remember, your first presentation here at the BS that I attended, and it was about Panopticon on Mars. And I remember seeing you in your T-shirt. I think it was on with the Mars. There was some Mars logo on it.
Oh yeah,
and,
totally.
Yeah. And I saw you there, and I was listening to you, and I just felt so inspired. And I'm also very grateful that we have developed such a great relationship since then, and you have been such a mentor to me. So thank you so much for that. Thank you all as well, because discovering you one by one, and consequently, it has also represented so much. You're doing so many great things in your own field, and I'm learning so much from you tonight, and I'm sure that also people sitting here in the audience are also getting an insight on what are some thoughts of the women working in the space industry. So thank you so much. Right now we will move to the Q&A. We're a bit late. I will ask Hala to come and help me with the questions in here. For the online audience, I would like to tell everyone to type their questions in the chat. So John will help me with them. And right now I will just pass it to you. So please, who would like to ask any questions, Hala? Oh, no, get it back. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, Lorena. Thank you. And thank you for the panel. It's absolutely inspiring. 100% glad that I came. So what I was to talk about is I've been to a lot of these EDI events where we're talking about whether it's women, whether it's disabilities and such, and we come away with it with so many things that we know are a problem and need to improve. But sometimes it feels like with organisations and the people who actually make decisions, it sometimes falls on deaf ears. They're nodding in the room, they're accepting it's a problem, but nothing comes of it. So I'm not going to ask a different question of, how do we resolve this issue? But how is we as audiences and listeners, what is the personal things, what's the personal action we're willing to take in order to at least make that impact from our side? Let's just choose one person. We will mix and match. So who would like to answer this question? Emma?
Perseverance. Don't lose hope. So, for example, as I've said, when I joined the bar, there were no lavatories. We all have lavatories and chambers now. So, the perseverance meant that our outreach to bring not just women, but in fact it was diversity from cultures, backgrounds, religion. It was really a very homogenous profession. And the perseverance meant that at one stage, we had more than 51% women joining the training, which is what we call pupillage. So we started with virtually none. I would go into court and everybody would be male except me. They actually thought I was a clerk until I took my green gown on and they realised I am one of the barristers. So my advice is it looks like it's slow because nothing happens overnight, particularly when something is so ingrained. But you'll be surprised by the sheer number of people pushing, the sheer number of people trying to move that dial is actually quite astronomical. And the number of times we say out into the big wide world, diversity will bring more cohesion, more integration, more efficiency into the way we all live. It sounds like it's falling on deaf ears. It looks like it's falling on deaf ears. But the reality is the dial has been moving. I'm now trying the very same thing where I am in the City of London Corporation, where I'm an alderman. That's very slow too. I hope that I manage to move that dial before I retire. But my goodness, things are, it looks slow, but don't worry, it's just perseverance.
Thank you.
Point, actually. Just one quick sort of slightly specific point on how we run conferences and sessions, EDI sessions in general. So I was at a conference recently where the EDI session was placed in the middle of the day's agenda, and it was not a breakout session, it was a plenary. And I think when you're attending conferences and you're asking for specific events at conferences, or if you're organising them, making EDI sessions being part of the plenary and not as a breakout session so that everyone has to attend prevents it from being just an echo chamber where people are talking about women's issues as some people can view them, and it hasn't got everybody in the room. So I think that's just one specific practical thing that can also be done and you can ask for as the audience of conferences.
Okay. And right now let's take another question from the public.
Thank you. On the point of inclusiveness and example, some of my colleagues around here will groan when I mention Star Trek. But in fact, to begin with, in the first pilot of Star Trek, the first officer of the Enterprise was a woman, and Paramount came down firmly on that because they didn't believe in having a woman in charge of anything. But I'd like to mention the actress Nichelle Nichols, who was the first of three actresses to play Lieutenant Uhura. When Gene Roddenberry was recruiting actors for the show, he gave her a contract. Paramount were furious about that he'd given a contract to a black actress and tore that up, forcing Roddenberry to hire her as a guest star who just happened to be in every episode. After a while, she began to notice that all the other stars on the show were getting loads of fan mail and she wasn't getting any. She inquired, and it turned out the mailroom had been instructed to withhold her mail. She visited the mailroom and found sacks of it piled up. She there and then decided to resign. That evening she attended a Black Power meeting where she met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She confessed her intention to resign to him, and he said, you cannot resign. You absolutely must not resign. You're the only person who looks like us on television who isn't a servant. I think this the whole you can't see it, you can't be it thing is very important. Sort of there.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I also work in an environment where there are very few women. I'm a drone specialist and I run a combat program. And so a lot of the things that you're talking about here feel very familiar. And I would like to just add to the last two sort of points just talking about as the first questions. I feel that we have a responsibility somehow. I'd like to throw this down as a challenge perhaps to the space industry, because space affects all of us. And I really feel like we need to find a different lexicon, different language to use for diversity, inclusion and equality, because we should make the assumption, as hard as it is, that we have it already. Somehow we need to get past the idea that it's something separate, because by separating it, we're keeping it separate as a problem to overcome. So I know it's a bit controversial. I'm just thinking about what others must, be thinking, me just saying this. But somehow, whatever we've been doing, because when I was at school, the idea that you could go after your dreams hasn't changed. We can still go after our dreams. There are more opportunities than there ever were for women and any people actually who want to just go after whatever it is that they want to do. And sometimes you don't know what doors are going to open because it's your imagination that takes you there first. So the gauntlet that I'm throwing down is, let's find a new way to be inclusive, to have diversity. And let's not just use those words, because those words just are not working for us. And in fact, I think they do the reverse. So anyway, I don't have the answer. I'm just throwing it down.
We'll just take one final question from here.
At the very back. Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you so much, by the way, for all of your valuable insights and inputs. You all really appreciated it. And my question for you is, the future of the space industry, space is for all, right? And the overview effect, that concept of seeing the Earth from space and that we're one human family. How do we bring this very powerful but fundamental understanding into, let's say, from the school systems up? Because if the kids have that profound realization at a very young age, we won't have to use these words like inclusion, diversity, because we start there. And the second part of the question is positivity, but in a pragmatic way, because it's really hard to envision a positive future when we're seeing in the media so much negativity and Armageddon. So we have amazing experts here on the panel. What is your vision for making this a reality?
Would like to take on that.
Go on, I might as well.
There you go.
There is no one answer how to make this vision a reality. If we had that one answer, we would have already done it. So it is a very complex issue that we're dealing with. I'm going to just marry up what Annalisa had just said on the words themselves have actually been hijacked. And they were hijacked by those who would not have wanted inclusivity and would not have wanted diversity. And what they did was they took them and they created narratives around them to the point that they almost became, in some places, dirty words. And I do believe in one or two countries, they've also become rather toxic words. But the substance behind them is very real, very needed. It is needed for the world to move forward. And no matter what those who have hijacked them for whatever reasons they have, no matter what they say, inclusivity, diversity is a requirement for humanity's continuation, because we can see what is happening right now in the world without it. The leaders at the top are homogenous, and because they're homogenous, they're about to push red buttons, and we are putting our trust in them, and yet they're playing in a playground where they've forgotten that humanity exists, and it's become their own personal playground. And this is why, yet the words have been hijacked. What is the answer? Education, 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 and an education again. If we can teach our children at the youngest levels, at the earliest stage, that this is the norm, inclusivity is not an add-on.
Yeah.
Inclusivity, diversity is a part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't need to be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it is being discussed today is because there are some who still exist because of their insecurities, are very loud and very manipulative in the way that they are preventing what is good and right for humanity from moving forward. So the answer is education, education, education. Just keep on pushing, keep on moving forward. If you find that those around you, even yourselves, if you find that you are uncomfortable with that internally, that's your insecurity. Try and eradicate your insecurities for the good of humanity, because this is not about you. It's not about those who have either hijacked or and I see the manipulation because I'm pretty much at the top of where I am. I see how it works. Those are genuinely those who simply have not worked through their own emotional maturity. They don't have it. They're emotionally immature people who continue to resist. I hope that answers your question.
I have one maybe contribution to that, which I think has been said by the audience already, is art. Art is where all of us are reached by art. So making movies, making cartoons, making series about that being the reality, whatever the reality we want to be. And then the next generation with us as, parents, as guardians of the earth, we are fostering that interest, through film industry, through creativity, including what the world would look like and how this works and how partnership works and how relationships works and how diversity is important and how STEM is important in any area, and art needs to be included in that because we have, left and right part of the brain. And when it works together, cross-disciplines create incredible projects. And everybody who spoke today have touched. It's not one direction. It's not one part of education. It's very multiple areas of career. Mm-hmm. So I think, your book that I understand that you wrote, through reaching through that, because that's something that people pick up, children's stories, programs, us going to schools and creating that.
And you just said it about us going to schools. I grew up in Balham in the 80s. My secondary school was in Tooting. I live around the corner from it still. And actually, randomly about 8 years ago, I bumped into my old physics teacher in a restaurant in Tooting, like an Indian restaurant. And he'd moved back to Australia and came back to the UK because of the shortage of physics teachers in schools. And he reminded me that there is no inspiration for girls in South West London going to an all-girls school because they are being programmed by social media. Girls in school now can wear makeup, they can wear false lashes because their confidence is shot by the way that these platforms have killed their confidence, right, and self-worth. So there is a lot that all of us can do. So I would say to anyone in the room, if you work in the sector or a STEM field, please get in touch with your old school and knock on their door and offer your time, even if it's like an assembly, whether it's primary school children or your secondary school or your old university, if you were able to go to university, because those schools, particularly the ones in inner city London, are really struggling. And I think that connection with the City of London and all the work that delivery companies are doing to really think about the charitable future of the UK, it's really important because, you know, we're all inspired by each other, and that's really great. But we need to get to those grassroots. And there are parts of the UK, coastal towns, that don't get anything. Megan, who you mentioned, the reserve astronaut, was in the day after one of the first days at SpaceCon. She went back to 4 schools and universities in Wales, and she is inspiring. And so we need to alleviate her time, because she's also got a full-time job with the agency. What else can one of us do? And Samantha, you are definitely one of those people that are doing a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you for everything you do.
Just very briefly, just a reminder, we all raise children, or a number of us raise children. I've raised 2 sons, and you instill certain values in them as well. So not just education in schools, but also in the home. I would wholeheartedly encourage that.
Sorry, could I add one quick thing? So sorry, just one quick thing I wanted to add, it kind of in response to both your points actually, was that I think we need a multifaceted approach. So representation really matters. We need to have events like this. We need to make art that shows women doing STEM, art, science, all different things, and leadership positions. Representation is really important. But I also think at the same time we need to be educating everyone on the benefits of masculine and feminine traits in everybody. So everyone has those traits within them. Being a boy doesn't just mean being masculine. Being a girl doesn't just mean being feminine. Boys can also think with, people-focused leadership, and women can be decisive. I think it's a multi-stage approach of representation and teaching everybody from a young age that all of our values and attributes are important and valued. So it's not a complete catch-all answer, but I think it's ultimately going to take a multifaceted approach.
Also, sorry, just to add to that, I think the bit about
We need to analyse up here.
and just building on that as well. When you think that if we're 51 or whatever it is percentage of the population, just making it a normal part of the conversation, but also having conversations without fear. Because I think right now we're still afraid to have the conversations about gender, and enabling the differences that we all have. Our brains work in different ways. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have a brain type, that should be something that is thought about and used in the most appropriate way, because I have an arts background. How did I end up running a combat drone program that's highly technical? It's because A, I had the interest, B, I had the curiosity, and C, it's a brand new industry that needs people that think differently. And so I feel exactly the same conditions for some extra ones in space exist, and it's to benefit all of humanity that your work is perpetuated and we've got more people included. There's only 20% of people. Was that the number?
Yeah.
Just think how long it would take. Not as long as in aerospace, where there are only 6% of the population of pilots, for example, that are female. So you've got a much better chance of influencing more of the population, which is a fantastic place to be. I think I've said enough. But
Thank you. And right now we'll take your last question, Alex, because I know you said that. And after we will move to the online questions for
a more technical question, actually, for 2 of the panelists. Anna, could you give us some more specific details about your reading proposal to ESA about psychology, and was gender part of that? Gender psychology. And similar question for Emma, without naming any names, obviously, can you give us some specific examples of advice you've given about shaping new space agencies?
So you're asking in terms of psychology, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, so I think nature is very important.
Sorry, I won't go here. Sorry.
Oh, it was funny. Okay, sorry, I didn't understand that. So what was that? I was listening because it was...
Sorry. your winning proposal to ESA about psychology and gender was gender psychology a part of that as well?
No, so that was more like Annalise's approach, like, of course, how could we go to Mars, just women or just men, or representing one culture. But there is an assumption, people do say, for example, I have had questions like, so would this crew to Mars or to the moon will be selected, from across the globe? And I said, do missions to ISS get selected by, personality types? And I said, no, actually, it's whoever is in line, because every space agency have their people that they have selected, and they just happen to need to learn to work together. And I think that's good. It's good for all of us, to be in a situation where maybe we are uncomfortable, but we are respectful and we are caring, we are humble, and we learn from each other. And that's why International Space Station has been such a beautiful space where cultures, would be respectful of each other, and they're completely different. We'll take when the, Japanese astronauts were working, and there's always a collaboration across where they travel for a specific segment to that country, which is part of International Space Station. So that really is a beautiful example of inclusion. Yeah. So what was the...
Thank you. Different space agencies require different advice because they're in different jurisdictions with different requirements, with different cultural internals and with geopolitics, which all comes together, so there's not going to be one advice. And also because when I do advise governments, of course, it's quite confidential. But if there is a common thread that I can put into all of it, it's what I've said tonight. It's if I'm going to be talking about, even if I look at the culture within a certain country, I will look at how the finances are put together. I will look at how they can collaborate with other jurisdictions in order to come to a consensus on laws, on regulations, on standardization. And I help them come out of defense and security, because sometimes some space agencies still have a bias towards defense and security, but we're not going to progress forward if we can't bring the private sector in. But when it comes to any of the advice that I give, none of it is going to amount to anything if they do not hear me, and they do hear me, by the way, but if they do not hear me on this collaboration, inclusion, communication, all of that goes hand in hand with progression for everything that they're going to do. So it's underlying everything is that those factors.
Thank you. And right now we will take one online question. John, if you could help me on that.
Just for my part, I've been really inspired listening to the panel. I think they've been wonderful. It's incredible really how things have changed in the space of a generation. In 2026, women are no longer hidden figures, are they? The president and chief operating officer of SpaceX, Gwynne Shotwell, is a woman. Next week, a woman, Christina Cook, is going to the moon. So women are no longer hidden figures, but there is a lot more to do.
Yeah.
There's a book that was recommended in the chat, and I would mention it as well, called Bright Stuff, Wrong Sex by Margaret Whitehead, about the Mercury 13, the Women in Space program from the 1960s. Do read it, it's enlightening. So one question from Sharon Jaffis online. I'm wondering about if any of you have considered collaboration with the ocean exploration industry, deep ocean floor exploration. Similar issues, closed loop systems, habitats, isolation, confined environments. That's what it's about. That was a question.
No, but but I was thinking about Antarctica. Yes.
Very quick. So maybe not quite the sector that they're talking about, like deep space exploration, but the European Space Agency have been doing studies on submarines as a closed loop system. So, we do look across different sectors to look for inspiration. We also look at the Australian mining sector when we're thinking about in situ resource utilization on the moon. So we are always looking across sectors for how things work and inspiration as to how to investigate those things.
Yeah, exactly. So because I worked on ESA projects, we have consulted submarine commanders, and we also worked with the mining industry as well, actually studying fatigue because they work 24/7 shifts in isolated environments, and they're away from family for several months at a time. So yes, we do, study because this is a beautiful analog for what it might be like, and also submarines, they can't surface. If there is an emergency, they have to deal with it as it happens, including Antarctic missions.
I can only think of Antarctica when we do the analogs for the extreme environments. So that's all I can say.
The answer is yes. I have been looking at the waters, the ponds, as we've been calling them, because once upon a time, the seas, the oceans, they also didn't have standardization of laws and rules, and it used to be the preserve of defense and security as well. And it was in fact industry that got together because they'd really had enough of losing money, having to go through waters with their ships, only to find that somehow it just wasn't working for them. And it's one of the examples that I use when we talk about how we're going to standardize the rules and the laws up in space. We only need to look at, for example, the International Chamber of Commerce, who created the Incoterms, and the Incoterms for shipping. That was industry-led. So, in fact, I have been looking at how we can bring insurance together, because insurance has already kick-started policies. They have their own policies to ensure if you want your business to thrive, you're going to need insurance. Why don't we bring the insurance companies together, draw a Venn diagram, look at the commonality between them, and go from industry level, because we're in a geopolitically fragmented world at the moment. And if we weren't able to come to a cohesive agreement on global standardization for the rules and the laws, then we're not going to do that today. So therefore, let's go back to industry. Industry needs this to work. Industry wants it because that's where the money is. So let's ask industry through the insurance companies, and that does come back to what did we do in the seas to be able to come to those agreements. An International Space Organization like an IMO, we need a global conductor, not just one organization and another one and another one. We need a global conductor that is going to bring all the organizations together and be able to bring that cohesion.
Thank you. Really quickly, so we talk a lot about ISAM, the Space Economic Network, which is in orbit servicing assembly and manufacturing. And to your point, we're thinking about the regulatory things. So you've got British startups that are creating materials in space. How do we safely get them to return those payloads to Earth, which could be in oceans and open waters? And then we have to think about returning them back to the UK. Do they come through a free port? Will they pay tax? Will they pay tax to the oceans of the jurisdiction that they land in? So that's really important. And also on the last note, actually that's funny, not as in astronaut, but it was also not as in nautical because of the seafaring nature of the laws of space. So maybe that's a good note to stop on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bella. And right now, because we're closing up, networking is followed, so everyone please join us for the networking reception in the other room. I would just like to say a big thank you to our amazing panelists for being here tonight. Thank you to our in-person audience as well as our online audience. And I would also like to say a big thank you to all the people from BIS who have made this possible, John, Sam, Colin, as well as our volunteers for tonight, because we have had four amazing volunteers who have made this possible. And I would like to invite them actually to the stage for a round of applause. So Kala, Yuri, Sofia, and Anna, if you could please come in front, we would like to applaud for all your work. And thank you, everyone. Let's also have a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. Please don't forget about pictures. So stay warm for pictures with our panelists. Don't forget about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.